In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to create chalkboard thumbnails. Now for this thumbnail, I'll be teaching you some basic photo manipulation techniques that you can use in your thumbnails to help create the illusion that there's a person doing something that they're not. So without wasting any more of your time, let's get straight into the video. So as always, create a new file, 1920 by 1080, keep all the other options the same and click create. Okay guys, the first step is to focus on the background. So as you can see right here, I have an image of a brick wall which I found on Freepik, and I'll link this in the description down below so you can follow along with this tutorial. So again, as you can see, I've simply just pasted it into my canvas, and let's now just place this nicely on screen. Something like this will do the trick. Okay, now the next step will be to just adjust the saturation of this brick wall. As you can see, it's pretty saturated and quite vibrant as well. So we need to tone this down a little bit as it's a background element and we don't want to give it too much focus. So let's go ahead and go to the adjustment layers, click on hue and saturation, and let's now just clip this to the brick wall layer. So just press down Alt or Option in between the two layers and click like so. Let's then go ahead and click on colorize, and now let's just adjust these sliders so that we get a similar color that we had before, but just a toned down version of that color. And the beauty of hue and saturation is that you can adjust the color to whatever you want, so you can have some fun with this step. So let's just bring the hues down to this sort of orange color, so something like this, and then we can increase the saturation as well. So let's just take the saturation up to something like 47. Yeah, that looks pretty good to me. Let's just toggle between before and after. So as you can see, we've just reduced the saturation of the brick wall. It's more subtle now and it's not going to take up too much of the viewer's attention. Now moving on to the next step, which is to add in a chalkboard. So as you can see right here, I've added in my chalkboard which I found on freepik.com. All I've simply done to this image is just removed the background and I've scaled it up to a large size. Now given that this chalkboard is one of the main elements in this thumbnail, it makes sense to increase the size of this chalkboard and have it quite large. In this case, you can see it's pretty much taking up nearly all of the space on the canvas. Now as you can see, I've shifted this chalkboard more to the right because we're going to have to keep some space for the subject. So the subject will be on the left, but in the case that you want the subject to be on the right, all you need to do is just simply shift this chalkboard to the left hand side. So I'm just going to undo that. We're going to have our subject on the left, and now we can move on to the next step, which is to make some adjustments on the chalkboard. Now the first adjustment that I want to make is I just want to change the green into black. I want this to be a black chalkboard, so let's go ahead and do that. So what I'll do is just go ahead and select the rectangular marquee tool, and let's see if we can from a distance just make a nice selection of this green rectangle. As you can see, I think I've made a perfect selection in this case. So once you have your selection, let's go into the adjustment layers and click on hue and saturation, and let's just decrease the saturation all the way down to -100. Let's just make sure once again to just clip this to the chalkboard layer, and let's now go ahead and also darken this chalkboard ever so slightly. Just darken the black part of the chalkboard. So what I'll do for this is simply go ahead and go to adjustment layers, click on levels like so, and then I'm going to simply click on the hue and saturation layer mask, hold Alt or Option and drag that into levels, and that's simply going to copy the layer mask from hue and saturation into the levels layer mask, meaning that this new levels adjustment layer will only affect this black region. Let's also clip this to the chalkboard as well, and now let's just adjust these sliders and darken this chalkboard. As you can see, by darkening in here as opposed to hue and saturation really helps to maintain a lot of the quality in the chalkboard. So yeah, that looks pretty good to me. I'm going to keep it at that. Now we're not done yet. I also want to go ahead and adjust the color of the borders of this chalkboard. So let's go ahead and do that. Now to achieve this in a very simple way, all we need to do is just bring back our selection of this black region. So let's just go ahead and select our levels layer mask, press Command or Control on it and click, and that's just going to bring back our selection. What we need to do now is inverse this selection. So let's go ahead and press Command or Control, Shift and I, and that's just now going to inverse the selection so that everything outside of this black box is now going to be selected. Let's then go ahead and click on adjustment layers and create a new hue and saturation adjustment layer. Perfect. Now if we just adjust any of the colors, it adjusts the colors for everything outside of this black box, but we only want this to affect the border of this chalkboard. So all we need to do is just create a clipping mask, clipping this hue and saturation layer to the chalkboard, so that now if we adjust the saturation, as you can see, we are only adjusting the border of this chalkboard. Pretty simple and a very effective way of going about it. Okay, so let's adjust these sliders. So let's just bring this saturation back to 0 so I can have a clear view. So let's just adjust these colors, make it slightly more yellow, +7. Let's increase the saturation as well to something like 21. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And let's just make this slightly lighter as well. So increase the lightness to something like +20 will do the trick. Yep, so again, this is just personal preference, guys. I like how this looks, so I'm going to keep it as is. Let's now add a bit of a drop shadow to this chalkboard just to separate it from the background. Now, you don't want to overdo it with this step, but we just want to add a bit of shadows just to make things look slightly more realistic. Okay, so let's just double click on our chalkboard layer. Let's click on drop shadow and let's just zoom out slightly and adjust these settings. Let's try and increase the opacity. Let's bring the size down to something like 50. Yep, that looks pretty good. Let's see the distance. Yep, let's keep this all the way to 0. We want this to be in the center, so keep it at 0 and then just work with the spread ever so slightly. So something like this, maybe 15. Yep, let's keep it to 75. Yep, and so as you can see, guys, a lot of adjusting, and this is just something you need to use your eye for. When it looks right to you, keep it at that. Okay, so let's click OK, and now we can move on to the next step, which is to add in our subject. Okay guys, now here is the subject that we'll be using for this thumbnail. Now as you can see, he's got the glasses on, he's giving off the teacher vibe, which is why I've decided to use this subject for this thumbnail. Again, you can use anyone in replacement of this subject, and I'll link this subject image in the description down below if you're following along with this tutorial. Now as you can see, guys, this person isn't holding a chalk at all, let alone writing on a chalkboard. And so this is where the photo manipulation skills come in. We won't be using this subject's arm, but we're going to use the arm of a different person from a different image and place it in such a way that it makes it look as if this person on screen is actually the one drawing on the chalkboard. So let's just start off with the first step, and I'll explain things as we go on. So what we need to do first of all, guys, is we need to separate this image from the background. Now we don't need this whole image, we really only need the top half of this subject. So let me go ahead and use the mark key tool and just make a selection of the top half of this subject. Something like this should be fine. Let's then go ahead and press Command or Control J to make a duplicate of that selection, and we can just hide the original and simply then just remove the background from this image, and we're good to go and place it into our canvas. So let me just go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back in just a moment. Okay guys, so as you can see, I've cut out my subject. All I've done is simply just resize it ever so slightly just to make it fit nicely on the canvas. Make sure, guys, that when you resize this subject, that you turn it into a smart object just to maintain as much quality as you can. So just right click on the subject and convert to smart object before resizing. Now if I press Command or Control T, guys, let's just do that. As you can see, the subject is also at a bit of an angle, and that's purposeful because I did that myself. So initially it was straight and vertical like so, but I've put it at a bit of an angle, as you can see, and the reason for that is just to make the subject look less stiff and not be so straight and vertical and robotic. A little rotation will just help to make the pose look more realistic. Now before we move on, there's one slight adjustment that we need to make, and I'll show you what that is. So what I'll do is I'll just make a new layer, and I'll press B for the brush tool just to showcase what you need to adjust, and the problem lies within this shoulder. So as you can see, we've rotated the subject, but this shoulder is in a very vertical position, and for this movement we will be writing on a chalkboard. So we need the subject shoulder to be sort of at an angle like this, and the arm coming up like this. So you could say that this is a hinge, and we need to rotate this shoulder into a more upwards trajectory to make the pose look more realistic. So how do we do that? Let me show you exactly how. So what I'm going to do first of all is just rasterize this layer, because we're going to make some adjustments to this image. So let's just right click and rasterize layer like so. Perfect. And now let's go ahead and select the lasso tool, and we're going to use this tool to make a selection of the shoulder. So what I'll do is let's just zoom in ever so slightly just to get a better view. Let's click on the lasso tool once again, and let's now make our selection of just the shoulder area of this image. Yeah, as you can see on screen, Perfect. So we've made our selection of the shoulder. Now guys, make sure to get this sort of t-shirt line within the shoulder. I'll just zoom in to make that more clear. You see this sort of t-shirt line right here. Make sure to get that within your selection. This is just going to help from a visual perspective to see what you're actually doing when you're rotating the shoulder. Okay, so once you have your selection guys, let's press Command or Control T like so. And now it's just a matter of rotating this shoulder as you see on screen. So something like this looks pretty good. Let's just zoom out a bit. Yep, we wanted this at a bit of an angle. Yep, something like this looks really good. Perfect. Let's now press enter, and now let's just press Command or Control D to deselect. Now I know what you're thinking guys, parts of my image are now missing. How do I get those back? But not to worry, I'm now going to show you how to restore these missing parts within the image. So how I would tackle this is simply by using the clone stamp tool, and I'll show you exactly how to use it. So let's just select the clone stamp tool, and what this tool lets you do is it simply allows you to source a part of an image. So let's press Alt or Option and click to source a part of an image, and it just allows you to paint that somewhere else, as you can see right now. So let's just carry on. Let's just go ahead and paint in parts of this image. As you can see, it's pretty much just bringing it back to life. So let's just source again, press Alt or Option and source from a part of the t-shirt, and then just paint that back in, as you can see on screen. Yep, looking pretty good. Now, when it comes to this line right here, we want to imitate the same style. So what we can do is press Alt or Option and click right here. And now as you can see, we've sourced this same pattern. So let's just do it again. So press Alt or Option, click, and then sort of just paint down in a linear motion like so. Do it one more time, click and paint in a linear motion until it looks pretty realistic and joins with this sort of shoulder line. Yeah, perfect. That looks good to me. Let's continue to work on this. So we can just remove these little nooks. Yeah, looking nice. Let's also get this line and sort of fill in this missing gap, as you can see. Yep, and so the more time you spend on this, the better the result is going to look like. I'm doing this relatively quickly for the tutorial, but you get the gist of this guys. So yep, just paint over, source parts of the shirt, and then just paint them back in on the missing areas. So as you can see guys, I've pretty much restored most of this image. Maybe we can just work on refining this line. So what I'll do is I'll actually just use the marquee tool. I'll make a selection of this whole area. I'll press Command or Control J to create a duplicate of it. And then I'll just press Command or Control T. And let's just try and just finish off this line. So try and join them together like so. Yeah, maybe we can right click and warp this slightly as well. And as you can see guys, I hope you're learning new things here. So this is what photo manipulation is about. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Maybe we can just create a layer mask as well. And then with the black color, so let's just select the black color to conceal. We can press B for the brush tool and just use a soft brush here to just blend this in with the t-shirt. So let's make sure we have a soft brush, and then it's just a matter of blending this in. As you can see, it's looking brand new. Perfect. Yep. Very nicely done. Okay, then we can just maybe merge this back with the subject layer. So select both of the layers and then press Command or Control E like so. And then we can just use the clone stamp tool to finish it off. I think this is pretty much all you really need to do to finish it off. Yeah, so let's make a selection and try and finish this off. If it looks good. I don't know if this looks good. Yep, you know what? Keep it as is. From a distance, you're not going to see that little adjustment anyway. Now, I hope you understood the concept of what I did over there, guys. Now, I'm trying to do this pretty quickly for the tutorial and for the sake of saving you guys some time, but I would encourage you all to spend as much time as you can just to get a really good result in the end. The more time you spend, the better the result will be. So here I have a copy of the original image, and I've placed it here just to help illustrate what we've actually done to the subject. So as you can see, for this original image, the shoulder goes in a very vertical downwards trajectory, and after rotating the shoulder, you can clearly see that it's at an angle. So we've clearly done our job in rotating the shoulder. Okay guys, now it's time to add in our arm from a different person. So I just simply searched in on FreePic hand holding chalk, and I was lucky enough to find an image with a hand actually holding a chalk. It saves me some time from having to add in a chalk manually into the pose, which is pretty easy to do, but in this case we don't need to do it. So what I'm going to do right now is make a cutout of this hand and the chalk, and then I'll just place it into our canvas. So I'll be right back in just a moment. Okay guys, so as you can see, I've cut out the hand. Now I've used the pen tool simply because I wanted to get a very sharp cutout of this image. What we now need to do is press Command or Control T to transform, and then it's just a matter of placing it on our canvas in such a way that it looks as if this person right here on the left is actually the one holding this chalk. So let's just go ahead and rotate this hand. Let's also decrease the size, as you can see on screen. And really at this stage is all about the eye, and I can't really teach you how to do this, but the more you do this style of thumbnail and actually make an effort to make it look realistic, the better you are going to get at doing this. Now by doing this activity, you're essentially just training your eye, and this is going to help you in the future when you create similar styles like this one. Okay, so let's just do it to something like this, and we are watching the shoulder and how it sort of goes down, and we're trying to imagine that it goes beyond the canvas and the elbow is somewhere in this region right here, and then it sort of stems back up. So what I'll do right now guys is just keep fiddling about with this, keep adjusting until I get something which looks good to me. You should do the same. This is a very good opportunity for you to practice and really try and improve your eye. I'll be right back in just a moment guys. Okay guys, so after experimenting with the position of this hand, I finally ended up with something like this, and I think this looks pretty realistic to me. Now there are a couple of adjustments that we still need to make, such as just color matching and also working with matching the levels of brightness. We'll come back to that in just a moment. What we're now going to focus on is just enhancing the subject via the dodge and burn effect. Now if you've watched any of my tutorials, you should know by now that we are just going to be using some curves layers to enhance both the highlights and shadows of this subject. So let's get started. So let's find our subject layer, which is right here. Let me just rename this to subject just to keep organized guys. And now let's just go to adjustment layers and create a curves layer. Duplicate this so that we have two curves layers, and then we will just simply clip both of them to the subject layer. So click in between the two layers, hold down Alt or Option and click to clip it to the subject, as you can see right here. Let's then rename the first curves layer to highlights and the second one to shadows. Let's then go back to highlights, increase the general highlights like so, and do the same for the shadows. And then let's click within both of these layer masks and press Command or Control I just to invert them so that nothing is visible at the moment. We are going to paint these back in on the subject manually. So let's start off with the highlights. So click within the highlights layer mask, let's press B for the brush tool and make sure that you have the white color selected so that what we paint in is actually visible. Let's also make sure to take our flow down to something like 5%, and let's also make sure that we have a soft brush. So let's just decrease the hardness all the way down to 0. And from here, it's just a matter of painting over the highlights where they already exist on the subject, just to enhance them even further. So again, just make sure to paint within your layer mask, and as you can see, just paint over the highlights like so. I'm going to speed this part up. I'm pretty sure you guys know what to do here. So this is before and this is after guys. So we've just enhanced these highlights. Let's now do the same thing for the shadows. So let's click within the shadows layer mask. Let's make sure that we have the white color selected, keep all the other brush settings the same. And now let's just paint over the shadows or dark areas on this subject just to enhance them even further, just to increase the contrast of this image. So I've just finished off my dodging and burning for the subject. As you can see, this is before and this is after. So you can see how much of a difference dodging and burning will do to enhance your subject and really make your subject stand out for your thumbnail designs. Now all that's left for us to do is go ahead and do the exact same thing but for the hand. Now you may be asking, why didn't you merge the hand with the subject layer and then you could have just done both at the same time? The reason for that is because I want the flexibility of being able to maneuver the hand at some point in the future if I need to do so. So I'll just go ahead and repeat those steps. So create two curves layers and clip them to the hand layer and go ahead and just do our dodging and burning on the hand. I'll be right back in just a moment. So as you can see guys, I've gone ahead and done my dodging and burning on this hand layer. And now we can move on to the next step, which will be to match the skin tones of the hand to the subject's face. We'll also adjust the brightness values just to make sure that everything matches. So I'm going to be using this subject right here as the reference point and we'll be adjusting this hand to match to this skin tone and the brightness level of this subject. So we're not going to make any adjustments to the subject, only to the hand. Okay, so let's first of all tackle the brightness. So as you can see, this hand right here doesn't actually match the brightness level of this subject's face. And so we need to match the brightness value. So let's go ahead and do that. So have your hand layer selected. Let's go ahead and go into adjustment layers, click on curves, and let's just place this at the very top like so. No need to invert this mask. We want everything to be visible. Since we've clipped it to the hand layer, it's only going to affect this hand. And so now all we need to do is go to the top right corner right here, click on this point and just drag it to the left ever so slightly just to increase the brightness of the hand. It's also doing it for the chalk, but that's fine. We also want to brighten the chalk as well. And we're going to brighten this even further. I'll show you what to do for that step. Okay, so let's see. Something like this looks just fine. We don't need to overdo it guys, but we want the brightness values to match. So this is before, so something like this looks just fine. And you can always adjust this afterwards. I think I'm going to keep it here. Now I also want to increase the brightness of the chalk, so let's just zoom into the chalk and make a selection simply by going on the quick selection tool, and let's see if we can just make a quick selection using this tool. So yep, just make a quick highlight of this chalk. This will do for now. We can refine this selection afterwards, and let's now go ahead and go to the adjustment layers and click on curves. Perfect. Let's now bring this to the very top like so, and now we can just simply do what we did before. Let's go to the top right point and let's just bring this more to the left. And as you can see, we are brightening this chalk. Pretty simple guys, not much of an explanation needed. Yep, something like this works just fine. I'm going to keep it at that. We want this to be quite bright because we want this to be visible from a distance when someone's looking at this thumbnail. Now I can see that the bottom half of this chalk is quite bright in comparison to the top half, so we can quickly fix that simply by bringing out the brush tool. Let's go ahead and have the flow set to something low, like maybe 15%, and then let's go ahead and have the black color selected, and we can just sort of lightly tap over just to decrease this brightness. Now you can see it's a consistent brightness throughout the whole chalk. Now it's time to color match the skin tone. So we can simply do this by going ahead and selecting the hand layer. Let's go ahead to adjustment layers and let's click on color balance. Once we've done that, let's just place this at the very top, and again make sure it's clipped to your hand layer. And now it's just a matter of just zooming in and getting a closer view. And now you want to adjust these sliders until you match the skin tone of this hand to the face as best as you possibly can. So let's start off in the midtones and let's just adjust and try and get this as accurate as possible. Now in this case, the hand is pretty much nearly exactly the same color as the subject's face, which is quite rare to find, especially if you're using a completely different image. But in this case, we have got lucky, so we don't need to do too much with the adjusting. So let's just adjust these sliders. Adjust the magentas to -1 and let's add some yellows in. I think that's what's missing here. Yep, something like this looks pretty good to me. Let's go into the shadows and let's adjust these sliders as well. So I think +1 will do here. Let's go to the magentas. Let's keep the magentas to 0. Let's go to the yellows and just add a bit of yellow into the shadows. -1, yeah, that looks pretty good to me. This is before and this is after. So we've just really added in some yellows into the hand. Nothing more than that. And for the highlights, let's quickly go ahead and adjust those. Let's just add a bit of cyans in as well. Yep, to something like -7. Let's add some greens. Maybe we can do +2. And let's just add a bit of blues. +3 will do the trick. And now you simply just need to zoom out and have a look, and if you think you need to make any adjustments, go ahead and do that. I think we just need to add a little bit more reds into it, so I'll just decrease the cyan a slight touch to something like -4, and I think we've matched the skin tones here, guys. And again, spend as much time as you want on this step. It's going to take some practice to train your eye, but the more you do this and the more you actually make an effort to match the colors, you're going to get the hang of it very quickly. Okay guys, looking good. So we've adjusted the color of the skin to match the subject, and we've also worked on the brightness. Now the next step, guys, will be to just add a bit of realism to this thumbnail by adding some shadows. What we'll do is add some shadows behind the hand and also behind the subject, just to make things look more realistic, and this is really going to help to bring all the elements in the thumbnail together. Now to add some shadows behind this hand, I'm simply going to be using the brush tool. So let's go ahead and create a new layer, and let's just place this behind the hand layer. We don't want these shadows to overlap with the hand, so we want this behind the hand layer. Let's go ahead and just rename this really quickly to shadows behind hand, just to keep organized, guys. And then let's press B for the brush tool. Make sure you have your flow set to something like 5%, and make sure you have the black color selected. And then it's just a matter of realistically trying to paint in some shadows. Now if you're impatient, which I am in this case, we can take the flow up to something like 12%, just so that we can do the job quicker. Yeah, like so. And then you can spend as much time as you want on this step, just to make things look as realistic as possible. Now for me, typically I would spend quite a lot of time on this, but I'm speeding it up for the tutorial. But just try and make things look realistic. In this region right here, it wouldn't look so realistic, so we're going to keep it to this region on the left. I think this looks much more realistic in my opinion. And again, like I mentioned, refine this as much as you like. Let's now go ahead and do the same thing, but for the subject layer. So let's just scroll down our layers panel, and let's go ahead and just create a new layer underneath the subject, and we can go ahead and do shadows behind subject. And let's just now do the exact same thing, paint some shadows behind the subject. So let's use the brush tool, and let's just start adding in some shadows. Okay guys, so I've just finished adding in my shadows, and I think it looks pretty good. So this is before, just remove these shadows, and this is after, guys. So you can see the difference with and without shadows. It looks much better right now. We're making good progress. What I now want to do is change the color of this t-shirt. Now this is a pretty simple thing to do. We simply have to make a selection of this t-shirt, and then go ahead and apply a hue and saturation adjustment layer, and just change the color to what we desire. In my case, I want this color to be a very vibrant red. I just think that for this thumbnail style, having a very vibrant red color is going to help to make the thumbnail stand out and grab the viewer's attention. So let's start off by selecting the subject layer. Let's then go ahead and select the quick selection tool and make a selection of this shirt. So as you can see, making a very quick selection. Just press Alt or Option to use the inverse to get rid of parts that you don't want within your selection. As you can see right now, I'm just holding down Alt or Option, and you're never going to get a perfect selection using this tool unless it's a very basic object with very contrasty colors. So just make the best selection that you can, and you can always refine this afterwards. This will do for now. Let's go ahead and click on the adjustment layers and click on hue and saturation, and now let's just adjust the color of the shirt. So I want this to be a red color, so let's just click on colorize, and then we can increase the saturation of this red to something like 70. Again, like I mentioned, I want this to be very vibrant and eye-catchy, and we can even play with the lightness value. Actually, I think I'm going to keep this to 0. I like how that looks. Now, once you've changed the color of your shirt, let's just zoom back into our shirt to refine our mask, which we haven't yet done. Let's make sure to click within the layer mask for the hue and saturation layer, and let's now press B for the brush tool, have the color set to black, and make sure that your flow is set to 100. And then it's just a matter of just zooming in, and if you see any imperfections, imperfections or areas where you added a bit of red or it seeped into the skin, you can just simply paint those out. So just refine your mask. Yep, this looks pretty good to me. I think we did a pretty good job. Maybe some here, as you can see, just paint that out. Yep, perfect. Nothing more to it than this. So yeah, this is the previous color of the shirt and this is after. You can see how it just brings the thumbnail to life just by adjusting the color of the shirt. Okay guys, and now it's time to focus on adding in some text into our thumbnail. Now, given that the theme of this thumbnail is a chalkboard thumbnail, it would make sense that we use a font which has that sort of chalk style. Now, there's two ways you can approach this. Either you're going to use a brush with a chalk texture and you're going to go ahead and write down your text, or you can just simply find a font which has a chalk texture. That's what we're going to be doing today. The font we are going to be using is called Chalkduster. So let's go ahead and add in our text. So what I'm going to do is press T for the type tool, and as you can see, once again, the font we are using today is Chalkduster Regular. Let's click on the canvas like so and just make sure that it's not clipped to anything, and then let's just type in our text. So what I'm going to type in is make, do a space, thumbnails like this. This is the layout of the text that I'm going for today, and now it's just a simple matter of just pressing Command or Control T and resizing this text, as you can see right here. So just resize your text, and to really give off the chalk style vibe, what I like to do is actually make contact with one of the letters with the actual chalk, just to make it look like this person is actually just writing this out in the thumbnail. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this layout. I just went ahead and increased the size of this text, and as you can see right here, I have my kerning to -30. That just controls the spacing between each letter. In this case, I've just brought all the letters together. You can simply do that by adjusting the kerning right here. So dragging this to the left will just decrease the spacing between each letter, and obviously doing the opposite has the adverse effect. It just spaces things out. I also think we can go ahead and add an exclamation mark, so let's press T for the type tool, click on our text, and let's go ahead and just add in an exclamation mark, as you can see right here. Yep, now I don't like how this is aligned with the text, so what we can actually do is just delete this, go ahead and make a brand new text layer. So just click somewhere else on the canvas, go ahead and create another exclamation mark like so, and then we can just simply press Command or Control T and increase the size of this, and we can align it properly with the text. With some typefaces, sometimes the exclamation marks and other symbols will not be in alignment perfectly with the text, so you may need to do this manual adjustment. I think this looks much better, guys. Now I think I'm going to go ahead and just draw a simple YouTube icon in the bottom left corner right here. I think there's something missing in this bottom region right here, and I think just adding a YouTube symbol and trying to do it in such a way that it looks like it's been drawn with chalk, I think that's going to do well and is relevant to the thumbnail topic. I'm teaching you guys YouTube thumbnails. So the brush I'm going to be using today, let me just go ahead and get the exact name for you guys, is Kyle Ultimate Charcoal Pencil 25 Pixels Medium 2, if you wanted a very specific answer. Now I think for the latest versions of Photoshop, this is actually a preset brush, so you can go ahead and use that, but if not, just find any textured brush of your choice. So what I've done is simply created a new layer at the very top, and all I'm going to do is just simply zoom in and create a YouTube icon from scratch. I'll maybe look at a reference image and just go ahead and just draw in a YouTube icon, nothing more than that. Of course, it would be a good start to have a red color, since YouTube is all about the red, and then let's just go ahead and draw the general shape of a YouTube icon. Something like this is sort of the idea, and then we're going to do the play button. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw this in, and I'll be right back in just a moment. Okay guys, so I've just gone ahead and finished drawing in my YouTube icon. Obviously I used a reference image just to get the right general shape, and of course I've tried to make it look as if it's been drawn in by chalk. So if we just zoom in, as you can see, there's a lot of imperfections, and this is just going to help to give off the vibe that this was drawn by hand, and of course it won't be perfect if you were doing it that way. So it's the little nuances like that, guys, that if you can pay attention to, is really going to bring your thumbnails to life. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next step, and this is not actually the last step, but we are going to now move into camera raw filter. So what I'll do is just go ahead and create a new layer at the very top. Let's press Command, Option, Shift and E just to merge all the layers in the layer section into one layer. Let's now go ahead and right click and convert this into a smart object, and let's go ahead and click on filter and click on camera raw filter, and now let's just bring this thumbnail to life. So let's start off in the light section. So let's just zoom out a bit and let's just increase the exposure. Let's take this up to 0.10. Let's increase the contrast as well. Yep, that's looking really good. Let's take this all the way up to something like plus 25. Let's go ahead and just increase the shadows a bit. So we need to move the bar to the left. So just adjust the slider to something like -3. And I think we can just increase the blacks ever so slightly as well. So let's just take this down to something like -10 will do the trick. Let's now move into color. Let's adjust the vibrance to something like +5, and we can also adjust the saturation, but since we have these very saturated reds, let's not do it too much, so something like +2 will just do the trick for now. Let's go into effects. Let's increase the texture, take this up to +20. Let's increase the clarity as well to something like +5, and then we can add some grain in as well. Let's take this to +12. Okay, everything's looking pretty good so far. Let's go into detail and just increase the sharpening to something like +20. And what else can we do here, guys? Let's just go into calibration and just adjust the hue of the red. See if we can get a better hue, a more attractive color. Yep, something like this looks much better in my personal opinion. So -6 for the red primary hue, and then click OK. So this is before camera raw filter and this is after, so quite an improvement as you can clearly see. What I now want to do is manually paint in a vignette. I avoided doing this in camera raw filter because sometimes using a brush is just a better way of doing it. In this case, I think it's going to be better. So let's press B for the brush tool. Let's make sure to just first create a new layer above our final layer. So a new layer on top. Let's increase the size of our brush and let me just quickly reset our brush to the normal brushes we were using before. So select a soft rounded brush and then let's go ahead and now paint in some shadows. But before that, just make sure to have your flow very low to something like, let's say 10%. And then we just simply, with a soft rounded brush around the edges of the thumbnail, simply add in some shadows, as you can see right now. And this is just going to help in bringing the attention to the center of the thumbnail. As you can see, guys, we're just adding some shadows around the edges. And you can spend as much time as you want on this step. No rushing, guys, no need to rush. Okay, this is looking pretty good. And then from this point onwards, you can just simply go ahead and assess your thumbnail. And if you want to adjust the opacity, just simply decrease the opacity if you don't want too much of a strong vignette. So I'm just going to zoom out. Let's see what looks ideal here. So let's put this back up to 100. I think we could go to something like 75%. And this is sort of the best of both worlds. It's not too much, but it's definitely there. This is before and this is after. So yeah, this just helps to bring the attention to the center of the thumbnail. Again, guys, spend as much time as you need on this step. The more time you spend, the better the result. So there you have it, guys, a chalkboard style thumbnail, and I hope all of you learned something new in this video. The intention has always been to gradually increase the difficulty of these thumbnails so that you guys can sort of follow along with the journey and improve your skills with every new video that I post. There's a lot, and I mean a lot of stuff on the way, so just stay tuned. And if you like this video, please make sure to subscribe to my channel because I'll be posting a lot more videos just like this one. Thank you very much, guys, for watching this video, and until next time, peace.